Happening now, breaking news, the handover, dramatic new details of Sergeant Bo Bergdahl as the Taliban issues new video of his release. So what does the Pentagon's initial investigation of his disappearance reveal? Secret briefing. Top administration officials are meeting with senators right now behind closed doors up on Capitol Hill. Will it satisfy lawmakers angry at being left in the dark? And prisoner swap uproar, outrage that high-level Taliban officials were released from Guantanamo Bay in exchange for Bergdahl. Does it compromise national security? I'll ask a former Bush State Department legal advisor. I'm Wolf Blitzer. This is a Situation Room special report, the return of Sergeant Bergdahl. We're following the breaking news. New information about the disappearance of former POW Sergeant Bo Bergdahl. Sources now revealing details of the Pentagon's initial investigation and the intelligence that prompted the Obama administration to agree to a prisoner exchange to free him. There are multiple new angles we're following with our correspondents and our guests. Let's begin with our Pentagon correspondent, Barbara Starr. What's the latest you're picking up there, Barbara?
Well, Wolf, we've now been told that Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel telephoned Sergeant Bergdahl's parents in Idaho earlier today to reassure them that the Department of Defense would continue to support Bergdahl and his medical recovery. The question of Sergeant Bergdahl's health is one that keeps swirling around. The first images of the actual Bo Bergdahl swap emerging on the Taliban's website. Bergdahl dressed all in white. He appears to be nervous, blinking, shaky. And then suddenly, like a scene out of the movies, the Special Forces Black Hawk helicopter descends. Two Taliban militants immediately take Bergdahl towards the chopper, waving a white flag. 3 U.S. Special Operations commandos approach, shaking hands with the Taliban. They pat down Bergdahl's back and immediately begin escorting him to the helicopter. Bergdahl walked to the helicopter on his own, but U.S. officials say it does not tell the whole story. In recent months, there have been 2 so-called proof-of-life videos of Bergdahl that led to worry his health was declining. The videos remain classified. But it was recent classified intelligence, not just the videos, that led to growing alarm about Bergdahl's medical condition and safety, a senior U.S. official tells CNN. Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel is aware of the details in that classified file.
Let's get the facts, but let's first focus on getting Sergeant Bergdahl well.
Hagel is saying little else.
The Army will conduct a comprehensive review of all the circumstances regarding Sergeant Bergdahl's disappearance, and I think I would leave it there.
CNN has learned that an initial fact-finding investigation at the time of Bergdahl's disappearance included statements from other troops that he had left the base on other occasions, according to a U.S. official briefed on the findings. In that fact-finding report, the official says Bergdahl's commanders called him a good soldier. The report also notes he mailed his computer and other items home, but there's no indication that he meant that to be part of a planned disappearance. Now, just another example of the rumor, the gossip, the innuendo, and some facts that are out there. There have been a lot of press reports that Bergdahl might have left a note behind when he disappeared. Some soldiers were reporting that, but the sources I am talking to say in that initial fact-finding report when he first disappeared, there was no discussion of them finding a note left behind. Wolf?
Barbara Starr, thanks very much. Right now, high-level administration officials are giving senators a secret briefing on Bergdahl, trying to placate those lawmakers who are deeply angered that they weren't notified of the prisoner exchange as required by U.S. law, and those who call it a bad deal. Our senior Washington correspondent, Joe Johns, is up on Capitol Hill. So what do we know about this briefing, Joe?
Wolf, the full Senate is invited to this briefing. People started milling in just about a half an hour ago. The expectation is they're going to get more information in this classified briefing about the circumstances surrounding the release of Sergeant Bergdahl. There is not a lot of optimism, I can tell you, being expressed, especially from Republicans who were on their way into the meeting. Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina saying he's more likely to get information from reporters about this situation than from the administration. Senator John Cornyn of Texas comparing this to closing the door of the barn after the horse has left. Privately, some senators have told me they would like to know a lot more about the administration's justification for going forward with this release and prisoner swap without the law as it stood. 30 days, Congress was supposed to get some type of a pre-warning, Wolf.
They didn't get that, and a lot of Republicans are deeply complaining. Even the chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee, Dianne Feinstein, says she deeply regrets that the president did not notify her and the ranking members of the various committees. All right, Joe, thanks very much. Let's dig a little bit deeper. Joining us, John Bellinger. He's a former State Department and NSC official over at the George W. Bush administration. You were the legal advisor. John, thanks very much for coming in during the Bush administration at the State Department. You've caused a little uproar, I guess, a little buzz out there. You're saying that this is not necessarily a bad deal.
Well, it seems to me, Wolf, that it's defensible. This is one of those tough national security choices that presidents have to make where all the options are bad. And I've not been involved in this. I've not been briefed by the administration on the details. But it just strikes me that the president has an opportunity here to bring back a soldier who's been held for 5 years, apparently in failing health, in exchange for some Taliban leaders who, here's the key point, we were going to have to return at some point in the next few years, and perhaps within the next year anyway. So it seems like a reasonable opportunity. Now, I think the White House has mishandled this. The reason this has gotten so politicized is that the White House started it by announcing this from the Rose Garden. So, they politicized it on their end. It's not surprising that we've got a big political reaction from the Congress on the other side. Yeah,
the president made the announcement with Bo Bergdahl's parents in the Rose Garden with him. You worked for President Bush, George W. Bush, for, 8 years, right?
That's right. I was president at the creation of Guantanamo.
What would he have done if they would have told him, Mr. President, the Secretary of Defense, we can get this American POW out of Afghanistan or Pakistan, wherever he was being held, but we got to release these 5 Taliban detainees from Gitmo. What do you think President Bush would have done?
Well, it's hard to say, but, I don't think 8 years ago, we would have made this deal. But here we are now with the end of combat operations, potentially the end of the conflict in Afghanistan coming up pretty soon. The Bush administration did return more than 100 Afghan detainees, Taliban, during our time. Admittedly, those were low-level foot soldiers. These are much more senior people, and I don't mean to limit that. But we're getting to the end of the conflict here. Unlike the al-Qaeda detainees in Guantanamo, who I think are not going anywhere soon, these Taliban leaders, I think, were likely to have to be returned sometime soon.
Because I spoke the last hour with Senator Marco Rubio, the Republican from Florida. He said these 5, he has no doubt, he didn't go into specifics, these 5 Taliban detainees have American blood on their hands. Here's the question, because you were there at the creation of Gitmo when these detainees were brought there, these enemy combatants. Why haven't they been tried in these military tribunals? These 5, for example, you say they would have been released. Why couldn't they be tried?
Well, I don't know enough about their personal backgrounds, but it's not clear that they committed war crimes that could be tried by military commission. Certainly couldn't have been tried in federal court. And this is where, I think the Obama administration has been a little bit hypocritical about this, saying, oh, Guantanamo could have been avoided. We would have just tried all of these people in federal court in New York. We were not going to be able to try the leader of the Afghan army in the Southern District of New York. And this is really the conundrum for both administrations of Guantanamo. We were holding a lot of people, Taliban and al-Qaeda, who had indisputably done bad things but couldn't be prosecuted.
John Bellinger, thanks very much for coming in.
Nice to be here.
Still ahead, classified information about Bergdahl's disappearance doesn't shed new light on whether he deserted or was abducted. And how involved was Hillary Clinton in the Bergdahl prisoner exchange when she was Secretary of State? We're learning new details.